Hare Krishna, I welcome everyone to this wonderful series of Bhagavad Gita, 18 chapters and 18 weeks. Thank you all so much for joining us and giving us your association so consistently. It means a lot to each one of us. Today we are continuing the Bhagavad Gita 18 chapters and 18 weeks series. And we're going to cover chapter 8, and it will be covered by Her Grace Indu Lekha Mataji. Mataji, you can take over.
Hare Krishna, thank you all for joining us. It's really a pleasure to be able to serve in this capacity, especially on Bhakti Sangha Japa group, which is very dear to me. So we'll start with the prayers. Om Ajnanaatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshadharine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, so we'll start today with a summary. As usual, we'll follow our standard format and do a summary of the 7th chapter. So if you remember, the 7th chapter is about knowledge of the absolute, and we were using a particular acronym. If someone knows the acronym, you can write it down in the chat or you can say it.
That was HEAD, Mataji. HEAD.
Yes, I have the slide right here. Okay, so yes, it is head, and very interestingly, we will be moving from head to another similar sounding word today. So a quick summary. So we start with hearing, and Krishna says, hear from me. He says, Tat Shrinu. Why? Because realized knowledge is so hard to get. And we start with some knowledge. And we understand the Lord, his greatness, and then eventually we will be able to understand Krishna. Once we understand who he is, his greatness, then we would be able to understand him, he says. And then we go to E, where Lord is present everywhere, and he's explaining how he is the basis for this material universe, for both the para and the apara shaktis, the jivas, and the entire material energy around us is completely maintained by Krishna. And there was a beautiful verse on this that explained how Krishna is like the invisible thread in a necklace, like on a pearl necklace. Then we go to A for accept or reject. So he talks about the 3 kinds of people who accepts him, who rejects him. The Dushkritinas, they are against God, and the Sukritinas, they accept God, and they are the pious people. And we talked about 4 kinds of impious people, Dushkritinas, 4 kinds of Sukritinas, and the pious people, they advance through devotee association. Okay, but he says that the 3rd category, the Mahatma, he is extremely rare. Okay, he says that Vasudeva Sarvamiti, that kind of a person, one who sees Vasudeva in everyone, he is very rare. But everyone can progress in Bhakti Yoga process through devotee association. And then he was talking about the different kinds of people we can worship, the different kinds of gods we can worship. So he says that there are these demigods, and so that was D for demigods. So some people, they surrender to the demigod. So how do they help? They will give boons that are temporary, that are within this capacity of this material universe. So what happens is those people will continue to remain in this cycle of birth and death. So he says, don't do that. You just directly come to me. So Krishna, he is going to reveal himself. If we would like to follow that devotional process, he will reveal himself to us. But for an impersonalist who does not believe in the Lord, because they think that he is also in a part of this material world, he is also subject to birth and death. So Krishna, he says, okay, he is going to reserve the right to decide who is coming to him, who is not, so they get blessings accordingly. And then he talks about these few words, okay, who is going to attain liberation. So for that he states a few terms. I am not going to talk about those terms here. Okay, we will look at them in the next chapter. Okay, so that is the kind of connection. The last two verses of the 7th chapter form the connection or the link to the 8th chapter. So Krishna introduces so many of these terms at the end. So he's trying to talk about a person who can know him at the time of death also. So who will continue to remember him even at the time of death. So he talks about 7 things, and none of us understood. We all had so many questions, and I heard one Mataji say that she got confused by when those 2 verses were described. And that is correct. We all don't know what these terms are. And even Arjuna didn't understand what it meant. But Arjuna is a sincere seeker. He's a very sincere student. So he decides to ask Krishna, what is all this? What does it mean? So Krishna is going to reveal its meaning in this chapter. That's chapter 8, Attaining the Supreme. So these are the terms that Arjuna was asking about. He asked him Brahma, that Krishna mentions at the end of the 7th chapter. Brahma, Adhyatma, Karma, Adi Yajna, Adi Deva, Adi Bhuta, and Prayanakale. So we will look at what these terms are, because Arjuna is going to ask him right away. So from head to this chapter, our acronym is DEAD. So do not fear. But this is a subject matter that people really would not like to discuss. And it is scary to even talk about death or think about death. But death is a very, very real situation, right? We don't want to experience it, but everyone in this world would have to face it. So as long as we have a body, we will have to go through this Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi cycle. So we have the cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease. This is inevitable. There's nothing we can do to change that. We can probably stall it for a little while. That's how science and medicine, it helps us to a certain degree. But sooner or later, it is going to catch up with us, right? So the 4 letters are D-E-A-D, D for doubts. It refers to the first 4 verses of the chapter, where Arjuna would ask his questions to Krishna, and Krishna starts answering them. E for end of life. And this is a very, very important for us to know, right? Because, okay, we'll get to that. And those are verses 5 to 8. A is attaining the supreme, which is texts 9 to 22, and D is devotion, which is verses 23 to 28. So we will talk about this. This entire chapter is very beautiful, and it's a short chapter, so we'll see how it goes. So D for doubts, and this is verses 1 to 4. We'll recite the first 2 verses because this is where the questions posed by Arjuna are mentioned. Arjuna uvacha kim tat brahma kim adhyatma kim karma purushottama adi bhutam cha kim proktam adi devam kim uchyate. Arjuna inquired, O my Lord, O Supreme Person, what is Brahman? What is the self? What are fruitive activities? What is this material manifestation? And what are the demigods? Please explain this to me. Adi yajna katam kotra dehesmin madhusudana prayana kale katam neyosi niyatatma atmabhi. Who is the Lord of sacrifice and how does he live in the body, O Madhusudana? And how can those engaged in devotional service know you at the time of death? So, these are the questions posed by Arjuna. As you can see, he's talking about 8 subjects here. Okay. What is Brahman? What is the self? What are fruitive activities? What is material manifestation? What are the demigods? Who is the Lord of sacrifice? How does that Lord of sacrifice live in our body? And how can those engaged in devotional service know you at the time of death? So, courtesy of Gauranga Darshan Prabhu's Gita Subodhini, I hope you can see all of it. Okay, just for the time being, just for this, I'll just go off video so that you can see the whole screen. So, what is Brahma? So, when we talk about Brahma, we have 2 kinds of Brahman, the Jiva and Brahman and Parabrahman. Okay, so over here, Krishna was actually talking about the Jiva Brahman, the individual living entity who is indestructible. He's Akshara, he's transcendental, he is separate from the material body. So that particular person, he is different from the Parabrahma. Okay, Parabrahma is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So what is Adhyatma? Adhyatma is the eternal nature of the Jiva. Okay, so that is called a Swabhava, or our eternal nature, or the impressions that are formed, that accompany us from one life, one body to another. So in our material consciousness, the nature or the Swabhava of the Jiva is to try and lord over matter. As we all know, we are all trying to win a lead and win over everything that we are seeing. We want to be the lording over everything that we possess. But in spiritual consciousness, this particular Jiva's eternal position is to serve the Supreme Lord. So that from Lord, he becomes a servant. Actually, his eternal position is servant, and he is serving the Supreme Lord. But forgetting that, he identifies himself with this false or this temporary nature where he is the Lord. So the next question is, what is karma? So the fruitive activities, karma is, as we all know, we learned about karma yoga. We had 2 different chapters on it. So that is fruitive activities. It is the fruitive activities of the living entity that causes us to transmigrate from one body to another. So what is Adi Bhuta then? Adi Bhuta is this Prakriti. So everything, this physical world, all of the material elements, the material body, everything that constitutes this, that is constantly changing, that is called Prakriti or Adi Bhuta. So this material body, why is it constantly changing? We talk about 6 different stages that our body has to go through, right? So a material body would have to first be born, then we grow, then we remain for some time, we'll have some byproducts, we dwindle, and finally we vanish. So it is only it is created at a certain point and it is annihilated at a point. So it has a fixed kind of duration. It has a starting and an ending point. So what is Adi Deva then? Adi Deva is the Virat Purusha, which is the gigantic universal form, and this includes yes, Prabhuji, yes. Earth can also be considered as Adi Bhuta because that is also the physical world. Yes, and even our material body is also a part of that. So Okay, so we'll move on to Adi Deva, the universal form that consists of all the demigods and their planets is called Adi Deva. So in chapter 11, we will talk about this universal form in great detail. But for a neophyte, they say that you can contemplate on the universal form or the Virat Purusha, and the Purusha's legs are supposed to be considered the lower planets. The eyes are considered to be sun and moon, and head is considered to be the upper planetary system. So we will look at the upper lower planetary systems in a little bit today itself. So who is Adi Yajna? So Krishna answers this also, and he says Adi Yajna is Paramatma. Adi Yajna is me. I am the enjoyer of all the sacrifices. So he is the Supreme Lord, and he is represented within us as the Paramatma or the Super Soul. So how is Adi Yajna known in the body? That is the seventh question of Arjuna. And Adi Yajna, he says, he is located in the heart of every embodied living being, and he is the one who bears witness to everything. He is the one who gives us the opportunity to act. That little independence, the little free will that we have, that is given by the super soul. Okay, so then Arjuna asks him this final question: how to know you at the point of death? Okay, so he talks about prayana kale, and for this particular answer, Krishna does not, like we see in verses 3 and 4, Krishna has summarized all of the other terms. He has explained what they all mean, except for this one: how to know Krishna at the point of death. So Krishna decides to focus the rest of his discussion in this chapter to just this one topic. So we realize how important that topic is. Okay, I will look at the questions in a little bit. I hope that's okay. Adi Yajna is Shiro, actually, Adi Yajna is Shirodakashayi Vishnu. Yes, Shirodakashayi Vishnu is the Paramatma. Yes, he is the super soul in each one of us. Yes. So we will look at a life lesson in here. So we know that we all have so many doubts, and we can see how you all are so keenly in listening, and you have doubts and you are asking them right away. And that is exactly the sign of intelligence. Having doubts is a sign of intelligence. It is very important for us to ask questions. I think every class, Matajis always tell you, please, please feel free to ask questions. If you cannot ask, by unmuting, you can put it in the chat. Why? Why? Because it is very important for us to clear our doubts. If we do not clarify our doubts, then that itself becomes our fate. So it will just kill us. If we keep on doubting, if we are not going to clarify our doubts, it automatically becomes our fate. That is how atheists are also born. They have so many doubts. They have no clarity on what it is. They don't even want to clarify. So they automatically believe that Lord does not exist. Same way, even within our families, when we have doubts, we need to make sure that we get things cleared out, resolve it. And in the fourth chapter, we talk about how we need to ask questions, how we need to ask our doubts. So, tadvidhi pranipadena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tatpadarshinaha. So, you need to ask a self-realized soul in a very submissive manner. You need to serve them. So, and we shouldn't be using that challenging mood. We should be open, our mind should be open, we should be ready to assimilate. That is the mood in which we have to ask our questions. So over here we know these are two examples. One is Shukadev Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj. So we know what the outcome of Parikshit Maharaj's questions to Shukadev Goswami is. It is the entire Srimad Bhagavatam. Actually, right now we are discussing the Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is also the outcome of Arjuna's questions to Krishna. See, if Arjuna did not keep on probing and asking questions and trying to clarify his doubts, and Bhagavad Gita would have ended in the second chapter, right? Because Krishna has already, he has entirely summarized everything in the second chapter and given it to him, given it to Arjuna. So if Arjuna didn't ask further, he would have been happy with it, and that would have been the end of Bhagavad Gita for us. But now we have 18 beautiful chapters. So in the same way, we have Arjuna's grandson, Parikshit Maharaj, who asked Shukadev Goswami. And that inquiry led to the Srimad Bhagavatam, very, very nectarian book on the Lord and his devotees. Also, next set of questions was asked by, this is King Janamejaya. This is a picture of him performing his Sarpa Satra, where he was after his father. His father is Parikshit Maharaj, was bitten by Takshaka, the snake bird. After that, Janamejaya performed a big sacrifice where he was trying to, he was so angry at Takshaka for having bitten his father, and that he decides to, annihilate all, kill all the snakes. So that's what this picture is about. But after that, Janamejaya starts speaking to Vaishampayana, and that is what leads us to the Mahabharata. So in our ignorance, we may do many things incorrectly, but once we start clarifying our doubts, that ignorance is lifted, that veil is lifted, and we slowly start getting that knowledge, especially if we are hearing from a self-realized soul. Over here, we are hearing the Bhagavad Gita from Srila Prabhupada. This is Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita as it is. So we just need to make sure that we accept it and we start asking questions. So some examples of, when when we have a challenging mood, like children, right? They sometimes ask very impertinent questions to the teachers just to challenge them. That kind of an attitude is probably not accepted, but the rest of it is good. So now we will look at the rest of the chapter, and this next section is on, from our acronym, it is E, end of life, and this covers text 5 to 8. Very, 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 very important section of this chapter, and very essential for us to also remember these. So this talks about death, okay? So for one who is born, we all have to die. And for one who dies, birth is also around the corner. So Krishna is explaining how a person's thought at death, that sums up their consciousness. It kind of sums up their aspirations that is cultivated throughout their life. Okay, so very important that we need to maintain our mood throughout our life, so that one state of mind at the time of death also is steady, so that we know exactly what our state of mind is going to be. Okay, because that is what is going to determine our next situation. It could be a next birth, it could be going to another planet, it could be something, but there will be a future. So everyone who dies, he has to take birth, or he has to go to another through another process, because we are all eternal, right? We are always there. So we just change bodies. So let's talk about this verse. For one who remembers God at the time of death, he will attain the kingdom of God. So that is what this verse is talking about. Very beautiful verse. Antakale cha mameva smaran muktva kalevaram ya prayati samadbhavam yati nashtatra samshayaha. And whoever at the end of his life quits his body, remembering me alone, at once attains my nature. Of this there is no doubt. Okay, so very important that the Supreme Lord, he is the purest of the pure. Anyone who remembers and who is constantly in Krishna consciousness, he will also become the purest of the pure. So Antakale cha mameva smaran muktva. Very important that remembering is, remembrance of Krishna is the key. So if it is not possible, remembering Krishna is not possible for the impure soul. If they have not practiced Krishna consciousness, if they have not been in devotional service, at the last moment, we cannot just say, oh, okay, I hope I remember Krishna at the time of my death. That is not going to come. Everything has to come through practice. So that's why he said, you have to keep on practicing Krishna consciousness through devotional service from the very beginning of life or from right now. It's only then that we can achieve success at the end of our life. Now, our life is this journey, and its culmination is right at the time of death. That is what determines if we have passed or failed our exam. So we need to make sure that we achieve that success. We need to make sure that we achieve success at the end of our life by the process of remembering Krishna throughout our life. So when we do that at the end also, Krishna will make sure that we somehow remember him at the time of death. So incessantly, constantly, we need to try and chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, which is Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So here we have the picture of a gopi. So this is just for representing one of the gopis who was actually trying to respond to Krishna's melodious flute sound in the middle of the night, in the dead of the night, when Krishna was calling all the gopis with his flute. There was a gopi named Chintayanti Gopi. She was so absorbed. Everyone, so many of them went. A lot of the gopis were able to go and see Krishna, but somehow her family members, the seniors in her family, did not allow her to leave the home. So immediately this gopi, she started meditating on Krishna to such an extent, with such great devotion, that she immediately got freed of that life. Immediately, she was so absorbed that she right away attained Krishna. So even in the Srimad Bhagavatam, we hear the story of Ajamil, where Ajamil was given a second chance, only because Ajamil, he initially was a nice Brahmana, and then he leads the life. I'll just very briefly talk about this past time. So he leads a life that was very sinful. He does so many bad things. And at the time of death, he remembers that, he's so attached to his son that he names his son Narayana. But at the time of death, he is attached to him so much that he calls his son, Narayana, Narayana, come here. But hearing the name of the Lord Narayana, the Vishnu Dutas come and they free him from I should have they free him from the bonds of the Yamadutas. So in that way, we can even get a second chance if we just chant the name of Narayana, even though he did so many sinful activities. So what happens if now, instead of remembering Krishna, we remember something else at the last moment, right? Just like how one remembers Krishna, and when one remembers Krishna, they attain Krishna. What happens when we remember something else? So that is explained in verse 6. Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tyajatyante kalevaram tam tameveti kaunteya sada tad bhava bhavita. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, O son of Kunti, that state he will attain without fail. So right away, there is a very beautiful story of, here we see, this is actually King Bharat Maharaj, who King Bharat Maharaj, he was the king of this entire planet. Okay, so and India was also named Bharat Bhumi after Bharat, after this king Bharata. So this particular king, he was a great ruler, and after many years of ruling, he decides that, okay, it's time to relinquish all this. He is going to go to the forest and he's going to meditate on the Lord, and that is what he wants to do. So he hands over the responsibility of the kingdom to his children and to his family, and he leaves without anyone, without anything. And he goes, and in seclusion, he starts meditating on the Lord. He starts praying to the Lord. He starts chanting the names of the Lord. So he is always praying. His devotion was so deep that he attained the stage of even bhava. He went really high up in his worship of the Lord, in his devotional progress, in his devotional life. That what happened, he ultimately, he was always in that state where he was constantly connected with the Lord, constantly meditating on the Lord. But one day, he while he was offering his prayers, there was a deer that jumped across the river. So hearing the sound of a loud roar, okay, so when the deer heard the tiger roar, she immediately got perturbed, and she jumped, and in that process, the baby that was born, the fawn, that got um, dropped into the water, and started getting swept away in that tide. So immediately Bharat Maharaj, seeing this, he decides to save the baby deer, and he takes good care of it, he provides for it. And as the baby deer started growing up, Bharat Maharaj, his attachment towards the deer also kept on growing. That finally it reached a stage where he stopped practicing his sadhana. He did not continue his sadhana. He couldn't meditate on the Lord. He couldn't continue his prayers. He couldn't do anything, because he was constantly absorbed in thoughts of the deer. So finally, when it came to his end, when he quit his body, he was just thinking and worrying about the deer. Oh, my deer is all alone. He doesn't have anyone to take care of him. How will he manage? And this was his worry. And that's how he quit his body. So whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, O son of Kunti, he will attain that state without fail. So Bharat Maharaj, in his next life, he became a deer. And then the story progresses. It's a long, beautiful story. So what it teaches us is that we need to make sure that we die in the proper state of mind, right? Bharat Maharaj, he is such a great personality. He was almost perfecting his life. He almost came to that stage, but because of the lack of association, he was incomplete. He was on his own in that forest. So because of that, because he didn't have that devotee association, he ended up thinking of the deer and left his body in that state. So he had to accept an animal body in his next life. Now, so then Krishna says, what should you do, Arjuna? So he's not telling Arjuna now. It's very interesting how Lord, he will give exactly what we should do, and he will tell us how to execute it also. So 8.7 is about that. Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mamanusmara yudhya cha mayarpita mano buddhir mamai vaishyasya samshayaha. Therefore, Arjuna, you should always think of me in the form of Krishna, and at the same time carry out your prescribed duty of fighting. With your activities dedicated to me and your mind and intelligence fixed on me, you will attain me without doubt. So this instruction to Arjuna, it is meant for each and every one of us, right? So we are all engaged in some material activity. So Krishna is not saying that now you'll give this up, give up your duties, and you come and you just pray to me. You just constantly chant Hare Krishna. That's not what he's saying. He is saying, he's not saying leave your duties. He's saying you continue your duties. And at the same time, you think of me, you think of Krishna, you chant the Hare Krishna while you are performing your duties. And this is going to free you from all material contaminations. It is going to help and engage your mind and intelligence. As long as we are able to engage our mind and intelligence in Krishna by chanting his holy names, we will be able to go to the spiritual planet, to the supreme planet of the Lord, which is Goloka Vrindavan, without any doubt. So he's saying you will attain me without doubt. And very, very interesting that Krishna says, Mam anusmara yudhyacha. He's saying, you think about me and you fight. Okay, it's not that you fight and after some time you can think about me. No, while you are performing that act itself, you can dedicate that activity to the Lord. That is whatever you're doing. Here Arjuna is fighting, he's going to kill a lot of people. But even that, Krishna is saying, just because Krishna has ordained it, Krishna is the one who has asked for this. Krishna is saying, go ahead and you have to think about me even while you are performing this activity, because I would want you to do this. You are doing this as a service to me. Our mind is very, very fickle. So it has to constantly be engaged in some kind of an activity. So it is very important for us to constantly force our mind to think of Krishna. So one example that is that we talk about is the Krita Brahmari Nyaya. Brahmari Nyaya. Okay. So Krita Brahmari Nyaya. So this talks about the caterpillar. So the caterpillar, as you can see, he is constantly thinking of becoming a butterfly. So by just that meditation of thinking, I want to be a butterfly, finally he's transformed into a butterfly within that same life. So in the same way, if we constantly think of Krishna, if we constantly keep him in the center of our existence, then it is certain that at least by the end of our life, we will have the same attain Lord Krishna. We will have his kind of bodily constitution like Sarupya at least. So we will be able to perfect our life. We will be able to attain Lord Krishna at the end of our life if we are constantly meditating on Lord Krishna. So one life lesson that we can learn from this section, this was verses 5 to 8, talks about end of life. So what is it? The main life lesson here is that we need to make sure that we are preparing for the final exam in our life. And how do we prepare for it? By practicing, right? So how do we prepare? We practice and make ourselves perfect. What do we practice? We practice the process of chanting. We read the Bhagavad Gita. We serve the Lord, serve the devotees of the Lord. And so when should we do this? Do we do this when we reach the time of death? No, we try to practice this all our life, if possible 24/7 right now. So basically it is that important that we do it right now. And what is the result of this? It gives us freedom from this endless cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease. So one example that we have is from the Mahabharata is how Bhima, we all know that Bhima could not eat just a little bit and be satisfied. He was huge and he needed to eat at regular intervals. So when they all were in their Gurukul under Dronacharya, Bhima, one night, Arjuna could not sleep. So Arjuna wakes up and he sees that Bhima is not beside him. Bhima was supposed to sleep by him. So Arjuna goes in search of Bhima and he feels that, oh, someone is sitting here. And when he checks with the torch, he sees, oh, Bhima is sitting in the dark and he is very busy eating his food. So Arjuna is like, Bhima, really, how can you see what you're eating and where you're putting it, So Bhima said, it is very simple. I know this is my hand and I know this is my mouth. So whatever food I'm taking, it is automatically going into my mouth. So that is Bhima's practice, because Bhima used to get very hungry. He has done this so many times that he has perfected that process of eating in the dark. So hearing this, Arjuna, being the perfect student, right? At that time, he was learning archery. So what does he do? he realizes, oh, this is a wonderful lesson for me. So Arjuna also decides that, see, I know where my hand is, I know where my arrow is. So I'm just going to focus on the target, and I am going to practice even in the dark. From that night onwards, Arjuna started practicing archery to perfect it, and that's how he became the best archer of his time. So even in our daily life, like we see how a child who's went to school, we have the final exam that is coming up. Obviously, throughout the school year, we are going to sit and study and prepare, and we give tests and we practice. And so after so many trials, only do we write that final exam, right? Throughout the entire year, we are practicing to give that exam properly. So why not, when this is so important for our existence, it is going to determine what we are going to be, in in our next birth, what we are going to be is determined by what we do at the time of our death. So that is our life's final exam. We need to make sure that we practice so hard, and that we, at that last moment, we are automatically able to remember the Lord. So even Mataji was telling us last week about how we do so much research for even anything that we are purchasing. If you want to get something, we do so much research. But for spiritual life, to find out who our spiritual master should be, who our spiritual guru should be, whom we should take lessons from, we don't give it half the thought that we give for something that we are using in our mundane life. That's not how it should be, right? We need to make sure that we are in the same way. We have to make sure that we research, we do our practice, we do our homework properly, so that we can actually get to that last stage where we have to pass our exam. We need to be successful. So always be Krishna conscious, no matter what activity you're doing. Okay, that is what we are trying to explain as the life lesson here. So now Krishna is talking about how do we remember the Lord? What are the different ways in which we can do that? That is talked about in the next section, which is Attaining the Supreme. This covers verses 9 through 22. So there are, of course, different techniques of attaining the Supreme. Now, this entire world that we see, it is a temporary university. It is specifically created for a purpose, and that is to teach us life lessons. So when we finally become frustrated by pursuing all the different things in this world, then we realize that our happiness does not lie here. Our happiness is somewhere else. As spiritual beings, our life is already very complex. I mean, in this material world, it just does not, we don't fit in. That's why we cannot find happiness in this world. This world, it is constantly changing. It is dukhalayam, it is ashashvatam. So it is a place of misery, and it is constantly rapidly changing. We have no idea. That is why we are not able to attain any peace, any happiness in this world. We are spiritual beings. We are supposed to be, our constitutional nature is being blissful. We are eternal, and our nature is to be blissful. But in this world, when we come and we are such a misfit that we cannot see happiness, we are always miserable. So there are many, many ways in which we can attain the Supreme Lord. And this is one method in which we can do it. So this is called Yoga Mishra Bhakti, where one can meditate on the Lord. So this is a process that we have to perfect over our lifetime. And at the time of death, how one leaves the body is what determines what they are going to attain. So at the time of death, the yogi who is practicing this process of Yoga Mishra Bhakti, he is going to fix his life air between the eyebrows with an undeviating mind, with no attachments, And he should be practicing celibacy throughout his life. He should have proper knowledge of the Vedas, and he should be vibrating the Omkara and thinking of Lord Krishna. And like that, thinking of Lord Krishna, vibrating the mantra, they will leave their body. In that, if they are successful in that process, that person will, that yogi will attain the spiritual planet. Now we all know that we are not yogis. We are regular people who lead a family life here. So this process that takes, as you see how this person, he has been meditating for so many years, and ultimately he is able to see the Paramatma within him. But that is because he has perfected the process. He has followed all the rules. And it's a very, very time consuming process, right? So it involves bhakti, but it is mostly this meditative thing. So they attain the Lord finally. But there is a process that is simple, much more simple when compared to that. And that is mentioned in text 14. Ananya cheta satatam yo mam smarati nitya saha tasyaham sulabha partha nitya yuktasya yoginam. For one who always remembers me without deviation, I am easy to obtain, O son of Pritha, because of his constant engagement in devotional service. I am easy to obtain. Krishna is focusing on that. He's sulabha, is easy to obtain. Okay? So there are different processes of liberation that are mentioned. One is karma yoga, jnana yoga, hatha yoga. So all of these processes have some bhakti that is added to it. Okay, so but problem is none of them are pure, right? So pure bhakti is what Krishna is talking about in this verse. One who is constantly engaged in devotional service, who does not have any mixture of jnana, who does not have any mixture of karma yoga, karma or hatha yoga or any other practices. Why? Because all of those, in each one of those three practices, when we are doing karma yoga, we are very attached to doing our duty, right? Even in the Nishkama Karma Yoga, there is some amount of attachment to our duty. In Jnana Yoga, we are very attached to that process of being renounced, renunciation. In Hatha Yoga, we are very attached to the body. We need a very fit body so that we can perform the, all the postures and the yogic meditation technique. That so all the asanas require that. But in Bhakti Yoga, the person is detached from everything in this material world. Their only desire, he desires nothing else but Krishna. Ananya Cheta, he has, without any deviation of the mind. In pure Bhakti Yoga, the devotee, he is going to constantly meditate on the Lord. His only desire, he's just wishing to be there and serve the Lord. So in Chaitanya Charitamrita also, the pure devotee is known as Nishkama. He has absolutely no desire for anything for the self. For his own self-interest, he has no desires. So because of that, Krishna becomes so easily attainable to a devotee. He is Sulabha. So Bhakti Yoga, it is a very simple process, right? We can practice this even while we are at home. We can constantly think of the Lord. We can chant the Lord's holy names. We can read the books of the Lord. All of this can be performed while we are here. There is no difficult, meditation technique where we have to make sure that the mind is constantly, brought back to think of the mantra, to think of the Lord. That is not there. He's saying you do your work and then you are going to attain me. So the Lord, he is merciful to everyone, but he has a special inclination towards those who are going to serve him, towards his devotees. So, and also for a pure devotee, he cannot forget the Supreme Lord even for a moment. So just like how the pure devotee cannot forget the Supreme Lord, the Lord also cannot forget his pure devotees. for even a moment. That is how it is, such an intimate relationship. Krishna is Rasovaya Saha. He is, so we all have a relationship with the Lord in any one of the five rasas. So that is the blessing of Krishna consciousness. Just by chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, we will be able to get to that stage where we constantly have that, we cannot stop thinking of the Lord. So in text 15 and 16, then Krishna says that after attaining me, what happens is the great souls who are yogis in devotion, they never return to this temporary world, which is full of misery, because they have attained the highest perfection. Okay, so the Mahatmas, they received the transcendental message. They know they learn from realized devotees. And so they automatically are learning, they gradually, not automatically, they learn to develop that devotional service, to develop Krishna consciousness. And they become so absorbed in the Lord that they don't have any desire to be elevated to a higher planet, or do they want to be transferred to any planet in the spiritual world. So what do they desire? They only want Krishna's association. That is all they are concerned about. They don't want anything else. So then Krishna is saying that from the highest planet in the material world down to the lowest planet, all are places of misery, wherein repeated birth and death takes place. But one who attains to my abode, O son of Kunti, never takes birth again. So he is talking about this material world, comparing it to his spiritual world. Okay, so he's saying that this material world has got many planets. So this is a picture of the material creation, this material world, this material universe. And as you can see, it consists of 14 different planetary systems. So we are here in the Bhuloka. So we have Bhuloka, Bhuvarloka, Swargaloka, Mahaloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, Satyaloka. Those are the upper planetary systems, the higher planet. And then we have the lower planets. We have 7 lower planets: Atala, Vitala, Sutala, Talatala, Mahatala, Rasatala, Patala. Okay, so these are all of the lower planetary systems and the higher planetary systems. But what Krishna is saying is, all of these planets are places of misery. You're not going to get any satisfaction or happiness or bliss by living here. In all of them, there is repeated birth and death. But Krishna's abode, in Krishna's abode, once one attains Krishna's abode, they are not going to take birth again. So all kinds of yogis, whether they are karma yogis, jnana yogis, hatha yogis, all of them will eventually have to take up this devotional practice. They have to take up bhakti yoga. It's only after bhakti yoga, they take up bhakti yoga, that they can go to Krishna's abode, that they can never come back to this material world. Okay. So those who attain these planets, yeah. So when there is a devastation in this material universe, what happens is we will talk about that. We will talk about time in this material world. Okay, that's what Krishna talks about next. He's going to speak first about the material and the spiritual worlds. He's talking about their nature. He talks about how there is no rebirth for one who goes to his eternal spiritual world, but one who is in the material world will have to take rebirth again. So that is what he's going to talk about here. And this is time in the material world. So we are looking at this life of Brahma. Brahma lives for 100 years. Okay, so this 100 years is in Brahma's terms, what is that equal to for us? Okay, so we know about the 4 yugas: the Satya, the Treta, the Dvapara, and the Kali Yuga. Okay, so these 4 together constitute one Chatur Yuga. Okay, or one Divya Yuga. And each one of these Divya Yugas, as you can see, is a part of one Manvantara. And in one Manvantara, there are 71 such Divya Yugas. Okay, so each Manvantara constitute a portion of the day of Brahma. A day of Brahma is known as a Kalpa. So Srila Prabhupada, he has put it very neatly in the purport. So I'll just read through that. And the duration of the material universe is limited. So it is manifested in cycles of Kalpa. Kalpa is 1 day of Brahma. Okay. So 1 day of Brahma, it consists of 1,000 such Divya Yugas, 1,000 cycles of 4 yugas, 1 day. Okay. And in the same way, Brahma also has a night, right? The daytime consists of 1,000 such Divya Yugas. And similarly, for the nighttime also, 1,000 such yugas are passed. So the cycle, so each one of these cycles, each yugas, they symbolize something. So in Satya Yuga, there is virtue, there is wisdom, there is religion. No, basically there's no ignorance anywhere, there's nothing bad, right? So this yuga is really wonderful, and it lasts 1.728 million years. The next is Treta Yuga. In the Treta Yuga, vice is introduced, and this yuga lasts for 1.296 million years. Then there is Dwapara Yuga. So in Dwapara Yuga, virtue decreases, religion decreases, vice just increases, and the yuga lasts for 864,000 years. And finally, we know Kali Yuga. We are in the Kali Yuga. So there is an abundance of ignorance, of strife, of irreligion, and vice. So true virtue is practically non-existent in this Kali Yuga. This yuga lasts 432,000 years. So in Kali Yuga, vice increases to such a point that at the end of the Kali Yuga cycle, what happens is the Lord appears in the form of his Kalki incarnation, and he will and he laid the, all the demons in this world, and again the cycle repeats. So we get back another Satya, Treta, Dwapara, Kali Yuga. So this is what constitutes a day of Brahma. A day of Brahma is a kalpa, okay, which is 1,000 Divya. So like this, Brahma has a life of 100 years. Okay, so for us, Brahma's life may seem so long, right? It is, for us, it is 311 trillion years. Well, that seems like a really, really long time for us. But for the spiritual world, in terms of eternity, like we all should remember, we are all jivas who are eternal beings. We have been here since time immemorial. So from that standpoint, this is just a snap of a finger. It is just a flash. So what happens during this kalpa is what is explained in the next set of verses. So he says, at the beginning of Brahma's day, all the living entities become manifest from their unmanifest state. And when the night falls, they are merged back into that unmanifest again. So bhutva praliyate, that is what the verse says. During the day, the living entities are manifest, and at night they are annihilated again. It's just like how we can think of like the high tide and the low tide, right? On the seashore, we see when the tide is low, there are so many creatures that come out. And then at night, the high tide comes and all of them go back into the ocean. So in the same way, in the morning, everyone is out. During the day of Brahma, all the living entities are manifest. All the planets are, the planetary systems are all created. Everything, creation is in full swing, and during the day of Brahma. But at night, all of this gets annihilated. Actually, if we go back to the previous slide, at the night of Brahma, until Swargaloka. So all of these lower planetary systems until Swargaloka get annihilated during the night of Brahma. But what happens at the end of Brahma's life? So this was only day and night of Brahma. When Brahma's life is finished, all the living entities are annihilated, and they go back to their unmanifest state in Mahavishnu, and they live in that unmanifest state again for many, many millions of years because of all our vasanas. We talked about our swabhava, right? The nature, that eternal nature, that nature of ours. Because we are in contact with the material world, that nature of ours does not allow us to let go of this material world, right? So even though we are annihilated, we have to stay there for millions of years in an unmanifest form, so that again, when the next Brahma is born in another millennium, all of these jivas will be manifest again. So in this process, in this way, it is just this endless cycle that is constantly continuing for millions and millions of years and for millions of lifetimes. So what would an intelligent person do at this point? He will try to use this opportunity. We have been given this one chance. We have been given a human life. So use it to the fullest. Make sure that we try to qualify. We try to succeed in that final exam. And how do we do that? By performing devotional service to the Lord, by being so serious that we make sure that we start right away. We do the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. We chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And that way we would be transferred even in this life to the spiritual planet, to Krishna Loka. And there we would go back to that constitutional nature of us, of being eternal, spiritual, blissful beings. So we won't be subject to any more birth and death. So Krishna's abode, it is, so here is a chart that we're just going to talk about what the differences are. From verses 20 to 22, Krishna is talking about his abode. What is it like? So, and compared to verses 17 to 19, that's where the material world is explained. So I just put that together in a chart. So the material world, as we understand, it is temporary. We get annihilated, and it is constant, creation, destruction, right? Creation, maintenance, and destruction. It's a function of this material world. So this place is temporary, whereas the spiritual world is eternal. It is permanent. It never deteriorates. And in the living entities in this material world, they are manifest during the day of Brahma. They get back to their unmanifest state at night, right? But in the spiritual world, and this creation, material creation is also manifest and unmanifest. But in the spiritual world, it is always present, right? There is no manifestation. There's no manifesting, unmanifesting, no annihilation. Nothing is happening there. It is always there. It is the same. This material world, it is a place of misery, and the spiritual world is complete bliss. Our lives in the material world is temporary, and in the spiritual world, which is our final destination, we will constantly be eternally living with the Lord. So one life lesson that we can take from this section is that we need to make sure that we seek permanent pleasure, permanent bliss, not the temporary happiness that we see here, right? We are all looking for that special happiness. So we try to always look outside us. Like you can see, so we see, okay, we'll be like, okay, maybe this trip is going to make us happy. So we start going, exploring places, sightseeing. We think that that's all going to make us happy. We try to purchase the best of everything for ourselves, the best car, the best kind of house, everything. We want what money can get us, right? We think that by doing that, by indulging ourselves in this way, we're going to attain that happiness. But in Chaitanya Charitamrita, in the Madhya Leela, text 118 of chapter 20, it said, Kabhu swarge uthaya, kabhu narake dubaya, dandya jane raja yena nadite kubaya. In the material condition, the living entity is sometimes raised to higher planetary systems and material prosperity. And sometimes he's drowned in hellish situations. His state is exactly like that of a criminal who a king punishes by submerging him in water and then raising him again from that water. So we do not understand that this body, it is always meant for giving us pain. So for the time being, we get some little pleasure, but actually this is a reservoir of pain. It is not meant for our pleasure. So the example that he's talking about here is that uh, a government servant, for when he catches a criminal, and what they do is the king would punish them in this way. They would take them to the middle of the river, and he would plunge, push their heads down, plunge them into the water, so that they feel like they are drowning, and the person, he is really suffocating, he wants to catch his um, breath, but these people, they would hold him by his hair and then put him down. Okay, so then what they do is, for a moment, they will just draw him out of the water so that the person can take a little rest, so that they can take a breath of fresh air, and again they would dunk them under the water. So this was the system of punishment that was used in those days. In the same way, whatever little pleasure we are feeling, it is just like that man, who has taken that breath, was taken out of the water just so that he can get that one breath. Again, we are going to be drowned. So this temporary pleasure, it's between like all the pains. That's what the material world is like. So we have to make sure that we look for permanent happiness, not this temporary, permanent bliss, not temporary happiness. So Krishna then says, okay, how can we attain my transcendental abode? By the different times at which we are passing, based on the time at which we are passing. So this is the last section, which is represented by the D for devotion, verses 23 to 28. So it talks of two paths, okay? So two paths that the soul has to follow when they leave the body. One is the path of light, and the other is the path of darkness. So the path of light is, it is when the soul is passing at an auspicious time. It is under the influence of the sun god, fire god, and it happens during the day, during the Shukla Paksha, like waxing phase of the moon, in Uttarayana. Okay, so during the first 6 months when the sun is on the northern side of the year, so first 6 months of the year. And who is able to pass through during this path of light? Those are the jnanis and the yogis. What is the destination of someone? Where do they go? Of these jnanis and yogis, they attain the Brahma Jyoti, which is the effulgence of the Lord. How about the path of darkness? So Krishna is saying, in the path of darkness, a person goes when it is at night time, during the smoke, during Krishna Paksha, which is the waning phase of the moon, and in the Dakshinayana period, which is the remaining, the last 6 months of the year. So we are in the Dakshinayana period. So who passes away during this time? It is the karmis, the ones who are performing karma kanda. Those kind of people are the ones who pass away during this time. What is their destination? Their destination is the heavenly planets. The karma kandis are the people who perform all these ritualistic activities so that they can get some material benefits in this life. So they are constantly bartering with the demigods, and that's why their destination ends up being the heavenly planets. So at the time of death, okay, our mind will carry us on to a new life. So in general, all the people must try to leave their body at the suitable time, to be assured that we don't come back to this material world again. But what happens? It's not in our control, right? Death is not in our control. So what do we do? The regular people, they don't choose. They don't know whether they are going to go in the path of light or in the path of darkness. But for a pure devotee who is in Krishna consciousness, there is no fear. He knows about the path of light and the path of darkness, but he is not going to be worried about either of this, because he is completely surrendered unto the Supreme Lord. He has left everything in the Lord's hand. So he knows that irrespective of what it is, Krishna is going to take care. So he has he is going to leave the decision in Krishna's hand, and by Krishna's mercy, the person is easily going to go to the spiritual world, irrespective of what moment they pass away. So the last verse of this chapter is explaining that Vedeshu yajneshu tapasu chaiva daneshu yat punya phalam pratishtam atyeti tat sarvamidam viditva yogi param sthanamupayati chadyam. A person who accepts the path of devotional service is not bereft of the results derived from studying the Vedas, performing sacrifices, undergoing austerity, giving charity, or pursuing philosophical and fruitive activities. Similarly, by performing devotional service, he attains all these, and at the end, he reaches the supreme eternal abode. So, a devotee is going to attain that eternal abode of the Lord. Why? Because he is focused on these 9 specific processes of devotional service. We can follow one or all of these processes, or a couple of them. It doesn't matter. We need to make sure that we try to get into that path of devotional service. The most important of these two are Shravanam and Kirtanam. We are all here for hearing the Bhagavad Gita, for hearing about the Lord and hearing his lessons, what he has to teach us, what is he telling us. That's what we are here for. In the same way, there are these scriptures. There is the Srimad Bhagavatam that we can hear, the Bhagavad Gita, the song of the Lord we can hear. So, and that is Shravanam also would be including when we chant, we have to make sure that we hear the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra while we are chanting. And the second most important thing is Kirtanam. So it is all about chanting, right? We chant the names of the Lord, his glories. We talk about his qualities, his pastimes. These are the 2 most important things. And Krishna also mentions in this chapter, Kalecha mameva smaran muktva. So we need to make sure that we remember the Lord at all times, so that at the end of life, we are able to remember the Lord. The next process, of course, is Pada Sevanam, where we are performing service to the lotus feet of the Lord. Archanam, we all can worship the Lord in the temple, the deity form of the Lord. And Vandanam, where we offer very beautiful prayers to the Lord. So there are many, many prayers in the Srimad Bhagavatam that we can offer, on our behalf to the Lord. Dasyam, by becoming a servant of the Lord. Sakyam, by making friendship with the Lord, just like how Arjuna, right? Arjuna is the Lord's very dear friend, and Krishna wants to reveal all this just because Arjuna is his very dear friend. And that will come in the next chapter, very beautiful chapter. The last process is Atma Nivedanam, where we completely surrender unto the Lord. We have nothing else but the Lord. We have taken full shelter of him. So let's try to make sure that we transform our life from being ritualistic to spiritualistic. Based on our faith kind, we constantly engage in so many rituals. We don't even know why we are doing many of these. But instead, if we know that this is our destination, we want to achieve it, we can perfect our life, our spiritual our life, by going to a spiritual master, getting guidance from him, and taking shelter of the Supreme Lord, and by chanting his holy names, by learning the scriptures under the guidance of the spiritual master, we can spiritualize our life. We can transform all these rituals into spirituality, into something that is much more meaningful for us. So in this chapter, we discuss so many, constantly the focus is on the end of life, right? We talk about remembering the Lord at the end of the life. So here Krishna, he is concluding this chapter by outlining the most effective, what is most important to attain the Supreme Lord, that is Bhakti Yoga. Again, he is saying, that's why the 28th sloka also talks about Bhakti Yoga. It is active service to the Lord in the mood of devotion. And this is the topmost spiritual path that we can attain in this world. So over here, we always have so many material contaminations, so many material weaknesses in our life. So we need something that is actually practical in our life, that is possible in this, busy life of ours. And Bhakti Yoga, it's so simple, as well as it is the shortest and most easiest process that we can do to achieve the Lord. For Kali Yuga, this is the perfect fit. So we try to make sure that we completely saturate ourselves with consciousness of the Lord. In that way, we would be able to attain the supreme destination, attain the supreme. That's what the chapter is all about. So I'll quickly go through the flow chart. Chapter 8, it is the acronym for this is DEAD, dead. Talks about doubt. So Arjuna, he has some doubts in the beginning. So he asks those questions and Krishna answers them. What is Brahma? What is Adhyatma? What is Karma? What is Adi Bhuta? What is Adi Deva? What is Adi Yajna? How do we attain the Lord Krishna at the final moment of our life? Prayana Kale, he talks about that. And then he says, what happens at the end of life, right? What do we remember? What we remember, that is going to matter the most. So we need to make sure that we constantly remember Krishna. How do we do that? By chanting, by reading the Bhagavad Gita, by serving the Lord and his devotees. And in that way, we would be able to attain the Supreme. So how to attain the Supreme? And why should we attain the... why should we attain this? And sorry, I just couldn't see that last part. One sec. Why should we attain the Supreme? And we can take a peek into the Supreme destination. So it shows us what the spiritual world is like. How does it compare to the material world? All of that is explained in Attaining the Supreme. And talks about the last section is devotion. We speak about the path of light, the path of darkness, and the path of a devotee who doesn't worry about whether he is passing at the time of light and during the path of light or during the path of darkness. So that is what this chapter is all about. I like to conclude here, and sorry for going over time. Thank you, Mataji. Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you all for joining and for your patient listening. Please let me know if you have any questions. I will try to answer, or we have a wonderful panel of very experts. They are experts in the subject matter. Please make use of this opportunity. We have Preeti Vilasni Mataji and Kirtida Sundari Mataji, who are both really
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Indu, Lekha, Karuna, Mataji, for that very fantastic presentation. Lot of insights on chapter 8. Definitely, I think the sweetness is multiplying chapter by chapter once we started Bhakti Yoga. So thank you so much for this very lovely explanations, very compassionate preaching. Thank you, Mataji. Anyone has questions, they can start putting it in the chat box, or they can even raise hand, unmute, and we can take the questions. We'll be more than happy to answer all the questions, and it's going to be a very nice journey with all of you. So just feel free with us. First, we have Jayesh Prabhu. I'm going to unmute.
Yeah, thank you, Mataji. Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So Mataji, I may have multiple questions, so please feel free to interrupt me if I'll ask more questions.
So Prabhuji, I will try to answer, and if I cannot answer, Preeti Vilasni Mataji and Kirtida Mataji, please step in anytime. They are really, this is a lot of technical details are there. So.
Oh yeah, actually, yeah. So when we say that as per our karma, we get the reaction, right? If it's like bad karma, they have to face it. Not in this life, I think in the next life and before attaining the next life. I'm talking about the non-devotees who takes the next birth, not talking about who doesn't take the birth. So for them, like there is some time between which they face that action, right? Whatever they did bad thing, we say that they'll be like in the hot oil and whatever in the narc and those things. So that is we face that, and then in the next this earth or this bhulok itself is a dukhalaya, right? So then it's like double torture first thing, right? So so first we faced reaction when we did not take the next birth, and then after the next birth also, because that birth itself is a kind of punishment, right? That we came to this world again. So is it not like when we did not take the next birth, like we got the full reaction? Is it like some partial and then something will be left for the next birth?
Okay. Okay, so I think this is what I'm understanding. So you're asking about between the time of one birth and the next birth, we suffer, right? We
Right.
go to the hellish planets, like we talked about Patala, and
Yes.
so we go to the hellish planets. We suffer there, and then we come back based on our further
Mhm.
karmic activity, right? So yes, we go to the hellish planets definitely if we have committed specific types of sins. Those
Mhm.
For those sins we will have to bear the result. So that happens in the hellish planets. We get the suffering and for it, and only after that would we have to come back and take another birth. And
Mhm.
that can be in any of the planetary systems. It need not necessarily be Earth, right? And it can be in any kind of a body also.
Mhm. Right. Right. True. Okay. So whatever the time in between, like death and birth, there is one which we face our reactions with the what is that called? Sthula and Sukshma, that's Sukshma Sharira, right? That which is by Man, Buddhi and Ahankar, right? Yeah. Okay. Okay. I think I got it. Yeah. Thank you, Mataji. So one more question was, Mataji. So as per the bad action or bad karma, we get that reaction. Uh, and we are as of now in the Kali Yuga. So when it will be time of the end of the Kali Yuga, and then again it's like the cycle keeps repeating, right? The Satyug, Treta Yuga, Dwapar Yuga, Kali Yuga. So in Kali Yuga, at the end of the Kali Yuga, there will be like so many sinful activities, right? So many bad souls will be there. I mean, souls who has done so much bad thing. So in that chart, I think that Manvantar and so many numbers were there. So even if they did so much bad thing, they will not come to this life until the next Kalyug comes, is it? Or because if they come to the Satyug, it's like very good to them, right? It's like good thing for them, even if they did bad thing.
Oh, very, very interesting question. Yeah. Uh, when when do we have to bear the fruits of our reactions?
Mhm.
That's a very good question. One thing that I just want to say is that uh, Kali Yuga for us has just started. We all know
Ji, ji.
that it's just been 5,000 years. So we
Right,
still have a long, long time. 432,000 years is the time for
right.
Kali Yuga. So we have a long way. And in that time itself, we would have many, many births to take.
True.
I would like Preeti Vilasni Mataji to answer when that person would come back again. That's
Yeah, then he's
interesting
like,
question.
yeah, he's like enjoying that like that long period, right? Yes, he has to come back to in the Kalyug, but yeah. So it's just that question.
Yes, Preeti Vilasni Mataji, can you please step in?
Hare Krishna. Yeah, others can add too. I really recommend that the others add. Yeah, so there are two ways to answer this. One is certain things we really don't know. It's ultimately under the Lord's control when He wants to, probably the way He wants and how He wants, when He wants the soul to undergo that karma is kind of under his control. So it would be hard to make a guess. That is actually the open answer. But then the other way of looking at it is like when you gave a specific case of at the end of the Kali Yuga, Kalki comes and he annihilates all the demons, and then it's going to be a long time before the next bad time can come.
Exactly.
So yeah, right. So the point here is that there are, yeah, as I said, there are multiple ways of seeing this. One is when Kalki is coming and annihilating many of the demons when they are killed, the kind of suffering that they undergo in the chastisement or in the how the Lord punishes, actually they are burning so much sinful reactions. Like for example, if you have a very debilitating disease, right, for several years, the pain, the excruciating pain, and the intense suffering that you go through is 10 times more than a person who is actually going through a small disease which is not so painful. So basically, in a short span, they extinguish huge amount of karma in a short span. So that is one way of looking at it, that towards when the Lord comes and he annihilates really, really bad demons, then a huge load of sinful reactions are being taken away by the Lord. That is one answer. The second answer is yes, definitely everything is under the Lord's control. And thirdly, it is not necessary that that person should come only in Kali Yuga. For a person to be sinful, he can come in any time because it's a matter of consciousness. Just like Hiranyakashipu, he was there in Satya Yuga, right? But he was very, very sinful. So there is no rule that you should come only in Kali Yuga to have a bad time. It just depends on your consciousness. Of course, the percentage of people in Satya Yuga, like how Indu was telling, very less, very, very less. Very few people drop off like that. But there is no, rule that you cannot enter Satya Yuga or something like that. Okay.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah, I didn't realize, that there are bad people in all the yugas, right?
Yeah. So you can understand this in various ways. Yeah, and others can add to. I'm so sorry for.
No, that was a beautiful answer, Mataji. Even I was thinking about Hiranyakashipu and, being there in Satya Yuga. And we talk about this material world being Dukhalaya Shashvatam at all times. It's not just in Kali Yuga that is terrible. Even in Satya Yuga, this is still Dukhalaya Shashvatam.
Definitely. This material world doesn't matter which yuga is always.
Yeah.
And you're right.
Yeah, it's just the lifespan is like longer in those yugas.
Right. So there should be some means of suffering, definitely.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the nice explanation, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for the questions.
Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Aruna Mataji, would you like to unmute yourself?
Yeah, Mataji. Hare Krishna, Mataji. Such a beautiful class. Thank you so much. Mataji, this is an extending question on Jayesh Prabhu's question. Thing is, do you think all material universes will be annihilated at the same time? Or, like when we are having Kali Yuga, there might be Satya Yuga, Dwapar Yuga might be going on in other universes, right? If that is the case, the same soul who passed away from this Kali Yuga time frame can be born during the Kali Yuga in a different universe, right? Is that so? What is correct? Can you please clarify?
Yeah, so constantly material universes are being created and other universes are being annihilated. So this is a constant process. So you're right. So when it is Kali Yuga in one place, it could be Satya Yuga, it could be some other yuga in another place. Yes. So definitely a person who is, so one thing is that all the living entities, now Preeti Vilasni Mataji, Kirtida Sundari Mataji, both of them are experts at this. So I'll just attempt and please correct me. I am sure that there might be a mistake there, but so until the end of this material universe, all of the jivas who are annihilated, they go back into this material world's Garbhodakashai Vishnu. So I think that they will continue to remain in this material universe until the universe itself is annihilated. That is how I'm seeing it. But please correct me, Kirtida Mataji. Please go ahead and answer.
Yeah, Hare Krishna and Lekha Mataji.
Hare Krishna
Yeah.
Mataji, thank you.
Aruna Mataji, your question that, all the universes are annihilated at the same time. So yes, when Karuna Vishnu, or you can say Mahavishnu, when he exhales, all the universes come out, right? So through the pores of his body, all the universes come out. And when he inhales, it's not that from one pore, one universe will go, another will stay. Because when he inhales, then all the universes also goes back into his body. So this question even I asked and I got the answer. That means all Brahma come into being at the same time and they go back to the same time. So this is what happens. And as Mataji was explaining, that at the end of every kalpa, that means every day of Brahma, there is partial annihilation when the jivas go back into the body of Garbhodakshai Vishnu. But when the 100 years are completed, when the total devastation happens, then all the jivas goes back into the body of Karanodakshai Vishnu or the Mahavishnu. That's the true understanding. I hope it helps.
Yeah, yes, Mataji. Yeah, thank you so much, Mataji.
Okay.
So Mataji, can I just clarify one more thing? So you're saying that all the universes appear at the same time, simultaneously. It is not that it is a constant process, because we also talk about constantly from the pores of the body of Lord Mahavishnu, the universes are being created, but that's not the right understanding.
Yeah, it's only when he exhales, all the universes comes into being. When he inhales, all of them go back
All
at
of
the
them
same
go back.
time. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Mataji.
Thank you.
Mataji, sorry to interrupt again.
Hmm.
So if that is the case, then in all universes, Satya Yuga, Dwapar Yuga should take place at the same time, right?
It's again, it depends. Like normally, yes, that it should be the case, but again, it depends like how it goes into, like every has its own cycle, right? But universes, they come into being at the same time. So it's not that they have to start with Satya Yuga. That this is not important, right? It can start with any of the yoga, but it comes at the same time and it goes at the same time. Maybe Preeti Vilasni Mataji can also add to it.
And as Kirtida Mataji said, there's no rule that it meaning the cycles should be in the same order. Secondly, the duration, right? The duration can vary from one universe to the other. There's no rule that it should be in a perfect duration, like timed duration. Right? So.
Thank you,
And
Mataji. That makes sense. That like if the duration is different, then because I was listening to Maharaj's class, he was saying, like the same Leela can be continued in different universes. Like that's what Maharaj was explaining. That's where I got mixed up. Like while let's say Vrajalila, it can be continuously happening at some point. Like there can be Sri Krishna Janmashtami happening at different universes on every single day or at every minute. So that means like this Leela is going on. That's where I got mixed up. But if the timeline is different, then that could be explained. Thank you, Mataji.
Also, to add whatever a similar thing to what Kirtida Mataji said, like for example, this time the cycle became Satya Treta Dwapar Kali. The cycle got a little changed. This 28th Chatur Yuga. So we got Treta before Dwapara, right? So sometimes these cycles also can be different. Just wanted to add that.
And Mataji, like in this, suppose in this Kali Yuga, we are reading Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam. We have so many pastimes of Krishna. So is it like with when the next time again the Dwapar Yuga will come again, those stories like again those same Asura will come, same will be like they will be killed as the same at the same, like same way like they did, like same again Putna will come again, that Aghasur or whatever is like those things will keep repeat and we'll again have the new book. Or
Nice. Very nice question, and this has been answered by many of our acharyas that the pastimes are similar, but they are not the same. Meaning, Putana will come, but maybe the details in the pastime are different. Like, for example, in one kalpa, in one day of Brahma, Kaliya becomes the vehicle of Krishna, where Krishna makes Kaliya his vehicle and he's riding around the Yamuna in Kaliya. So the details change, but the overall pastimes are somewhat similar. And also other scenario.
Thank you, Mataji. Sorry, so many questions.
No, that's good, Jayesh Prabhu. Actually, should ask these questions. They open up more avenues to it.
Thank you, Mataji.
Lalitangi Mataji has raised her hand. I think Mataji might have something to add.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Danot Pranams, very, very wonderful class and so beautiful question and answer sessions. I just wanted to add on the Brahma topic about the universes. What I've heard is that, like we all know this pastime about in Chaitanya Charitamrita, how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying that the four-headed Brahma is coming. And then Krishna is asking that which Brahma. Then Brahma is saying that no, I am the only Brahma. Then Krishna, by his thought, he brings so many Brahmas, and then four-headed Brahma looks like he feels himself insignificant as an ant, because there are 10-headed, 12-headed, 1,000-headed Brahmas coming. So we can understand that from this the time scales also vary in different universes, because four-headed could be the smallest Brahma, and then according to that his 100 years are the universe is less. But as the complexity of universe increases, then Brahma becomes he has to have more heads, and so there are so many things that still we don't know yet clearly what happens in other universe. But then we can guess that the time durations may vary. What is 100 years for this Brahma could be different for other Brahmas. So just I wanted to add this. Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, dear Indu Lekha Gopi, Karunamai Gopi, you are such a sweet Vaishnavi. That special mercy of H.H. Jaipataka Maharaj and Srila Prabhupada and our Guru Parampara, you explain so nicely all the stories of Sada Goswami, Caterpillar, Narayan story, Bharat Maharaj story, what is our conscious, then you explain about the temporary happiness and material and spiritual eternal happiness manifested, always present, misery in a material world and spiritual world bliss, temporary life in material world and final destination, and seek permanent place in our spiritual journey, not temporary happiness. We should be not go to the temporary happiness, but finding a permanent blessing in a spiritual life, and devotional. So nicely explained about the auspicious and the darkness, then auspicious time. I take only 2 minutes at night, and the auspicious god, like a fire god, and during the Krishna Paksa, during the daytime, Krishna Paksa, Sukal Paksa, then Dakshinayana Paksa, Uttarayana Paksha, and who is Karmi and Gnani and Yogis destination Brahma Jyoti,
And you explained so nice about Satala, Vitala, Sutala, Tapalako, Mahatala, Rasatala, Patala, and life of Brahma, Kalpa, days of Brahma, Brahma, 4.30 millions, 14 Manmantara, then Manmantara, you explained 306.72 million years, then Vivya Yoga, 4.32 million years, 4 Yuga, that is Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapar Yuga, and Kali Yuga. Satya Yuga is a 1.72, 1.728 millions, please forgive me. Treta Yuga is a 1.296 million years. Dwapar Yuga is 8 lakh 64 years, 8,064 years, and Kali Yuga is a 432 million. And you explained so nicely about Naudha Bhakti, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dashyam, Shakyam, Atma Nivedam. Always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna. Chant attentively. Read Shishi Bhagavatam. Read as it is Srila Prabhupada Shishi Bhagavatam. Then serve Lord Krishna's devotee and birth date, old age, and this is how we have to come out only by hearing Krishna Katha regularly with our senior Vaishnava and association with the Vaishnava and serve the Vaishnava. Those who are doing seva constantly engage themselves in Lord Krishna and Srimati Shri Radharani, like all Bhakti Sangha teachers, our H.G. Priti Vilasani, H.G. Kirtidasundari, H.G. Lalitangi Dasi. So sincerely and confidently you explained that sitting in Shri Radha Gopinath and senior brahmacharis taking class. Koti Koti Danvat Pranam, dear Aruna, Indu Lekha Karuna My Gopi, Srila Prabhupada, Srila Gurudev Ki Jai. Thank you, beta, for your deep devotional association.
Hare Krishna, Brinda Gopika Mataji. Wonderful summary, Mataji. Thank you so much for your. You pay attention to even these classes. I mean, you are so elevated, and you take classes and you preach so beautifully. And you take notes over here, and you're sitting and listening to our classes. I'm really praying that I develop that mood where I can give my full attention to every class that I hear. Thank you so much, Mataji.
All glorious to Bhakti Sangha, senior teachers, and all glorious to Shikshka Swami, Srila Prabhupada, our Guru Parampara, our Acharya Gan, and Shri Radha Gopinath, Jai Jai Nityananda, Jai Jai Gauranga. All credits goes to them, beta, Hari Hari Gauranga. So nicely explained today's class. Please, Gopi, you are.
Thank you, Mataji, for your blessings. Please continue to shower your blessings and mercy. Hare Krishna.
We have question from Avanish. Avanish Prabhu. Yeah, he wrote that looks like Earth is like a spaceship, have expiration date, and similarly there might be many other spaceship like Earth created by Krishna, created at different times with Yuga.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Actually, I don't have a question. I was just
Yes,
His
Prabhu.
realization, yeah.
No, but Prabhu, not only this Earth, but basically this whole universe, you can say, is a kind of a spaceship. You can say that because this whole universe has this 14 planetary system, right? So it's not only just the Earth, but the universe together.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Prabhu.
Mataji, there is one more question. Keshwani Komal, we pray, and at the end, if each and everyone attain the Almighty and we reached to Vaikunta, then will there be any other life cycle or everything will end? Hare Krishna Mataji, can you please unmute yourself?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Can you please repeat your question? Are you asking that if everyone goes back to the spiritual world, would that be the end? Is that what you are asking?
Yes.
Yes, that would be such a wonderful situation, Mataji. So just the other day, we were hearing that the spiritual world contains 90% of the living entities, and it's only 10% that is there in this material world. So let's pray that the remaining 10% also can go and get that association of the Lord.
Yeah, we can pray that, but there would not be at any
Always.
point of time that this world will be empty. That cannot be possible, because Krishna says that only few of the devotees out of millions, only few are there who realize him, and out of those who realize him, only one get a chance to go back to him. So at every point of time, there will be some souls who will be there in the cycle of birth and death. So that's what Krishna's arrangement is.
So Mataji, even after following all the points that in Mataji mentioned, still there is a chances that you will not go to Krishna.
Of course, Prabhu, because see how much we are following and how diligently we are following, and till how long we can follow. It's a continuous process. So it's definitely not possible, that everyone at any point of time can go back. There'll be definitely few souls who will be left behind and will continue their journey.
Okay.
Yeah, and in the world, every square feet has so many souls, right? Soul is sarvagata. Everywhere there are living entities. Just imagine how much virus and bacteria you see around you. Yeah, so many souls are there. It's going to take a long time. Or it might never. Actually, it will never.
It's an endless cycle.
Hare Krishna Mataji, this information that you're sharing, like that 90% reside in the spiritual world, what is the source of that? Like, how do we know that that's the case?
Okay, so this was from Preeti Vilasni Mataji's class itself on Goloka chart. So Mataji itself will be able to answer that very beautifully.
It's just the revelation of our acharyas, and the material. So in the Vedas itself, it is mentioned that the spiritual world is Tripada Vibhuti, and the material universe is only the quarter of the entire Lord's energy, external energy. So basically, if you look at creation, considering both spiritual world and material world, 3/4 is the spiritual world, and just quarter is the material world. In this quarter, it looks like we are saying quarter. Quarter looks like a small number. But you have this Mahavishnu from whose pores so many universes are coming out. So just think of the number of pores that is there in just your body, unlimited pores. Now Mahavishnu, from his body, you can imagine how many universes are coming. So all these universes put together is called as only 1/4 of the Lord's creation, while the 3/4 are there. So you can, if 1/4 has so many living entities, you can imagine the number of living entities in the spiritual world. So our acharyas explained to us that almost 90% of them are there. We are those little few who chose to come here. So congratulations. Yeah. That's, yeah.
Thank you. And yes, as Mataji was asking the source, so it's in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Leela, chapter 21, verse number 55, where it says, Chit Shakti Vibhuti Dhama, Tripada Aishwarya Nama, Maya Vibhuti Ekapada Avidhana. That the spiritual world is considered to be the 3/4 of the energy of the opulence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whereas the material world is only 1/4 of that energy. That is the right understanding.
Okay, thank you so much, Mataji.
Yes, Mataji, we couldn't hear that last part.
No,
Oh, actually, thank you so much, Mataji. That was very
Yes,
helpful.
Mataji, if you can share the verse in the chat also, that would be nice, Mataji.
oh, okay. It's Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Leela, chapter number 21, verse number 55.
Okay, I got it. Okay. Hare Krishna Sukasagari Mataji. Would you like to add something, Mataji?
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranams, nice class. I was actually listening on Facebook as I was out. I just have a question, Mataji. That was an interesting discussion regarding the annihilation.
Like I mean, I remember discussing with Preeti long time back, 3 or 4 years back. There are 4 kinds of annihilations, but I just want some clarity on. I mean, because the different Brahmas have, different lifespans, right? So if they're all annihilated at the same time, does that mean that some Brahma may not be following his whole lifespan? I mean, how does it work? Because that's always been a question on my mind, because I know during Mahapralaya all the universes are annihilated, but also we know the fact that different Brahmas have different lifespans. So it's a little if you can throw some light on that, it'll be nice. Thank you.
It's a tough one. Different Brahmas will have different lifespans. Yeah. So Mataji, how it is just imagine this. I mean, it's very abstract in the first take. The reason is because we're talking about Mahavishnu's breath, right? So one breath is what, like few seconds? For Mahavishnu, it's a few seconds, right? Or less than a second. I don't even know how much it takes a breath for a human being, but one breath is just like say a fraction of a second or just 1 second. Now, in that, for example, I'll try to explain this. I hope you are able to concentrate and catch it. So if I say that 0.25, seconds, if I say 0.25 seconds, now that 0.25 seconds may not be exactly 0.250. It might be 0.25123, 0.25008. So within that little tiny, fraction of a fraction of a fraction, you're having different lives of Brahmas. So that fraction is so small that you can pretty much round off the decimal. Are you getting it?
So you're saying that simple way to, in effect, it all boils down to the 100 years of our Brahma.
Yes, it
Makes
boils down.
sense, yeah. Whether it is 100 or 150 or 120, it should not matter, because it's just one breath of Vishnu. That's what I wanted to say. Yeah.
Yeah, even like in the material world and a Swargaloka, right? There is a lot of difference. There is a difference between Bhurloka, and there is a difference between, the Brahmaloka. There is a huge gap of time, right? So similarly, the life of every Brahma is 100 years, but that 100 years can be multiplied into so many times, depending upon from one universe to another universe. That way we can try to understand. But yes, that's for sure that the body, when Mahavishnu inhales, all of them goes together, and when he exhales, all of them comes into being.
Yes, Mataji, I do understand that all Brahmas have a lifespan of 100, though it's on a different scale, like it's relative. Because on Swarga, it's longer lifespans like that. But my question, I mean, I was a little confused on, if everybody is living for 100, but what Preeti just told kind of made some sense to me, that, in the large scheme of things, it's like very infinitesimal and very, very small, like 0.00 whatever. So it's kind of rounded. So, I mean, that kind of makes some sense to me. But then that again leaves me with the question that almost all the Brahma years are the same, though, we tend to say that the 1,000-headed Brahma would have, like a different lifespan. I mean, of course, 100 years, but then again, because it's a bigger.
Meaning, when compared to the breath of Vishnu, it is very small. Just like when I'm saying that the star is very far away, sun is very far away, right? Whether for me, I'm standing on earth, for me, it is far. Even if I'm on a plane, I've gone a few feet near it. That's all. But still, it is the same distance, whether I'm on the sky in the plane or I'm on earth, right?
So the infinity minus 1 is infinity. That's what you said.
Something like that. Yeah, yeah. So definitely,
Sorry. Please go ahead. Yeah.
So even if they have other whatever things, it should not matter in term when you look at the vastness of this universe.
Yeah. So are you saying then, Preeti, that for whatever that infinitesimal value is. Maybe for another, I mean, in the calculation of Vishnu, it may be different, right? Because it's very, I mean, like, it's like the blink of the eye, right? Our lifespans actually for Krishna. So, but then, in that little time, will the other universe, like supposing our Brahma has completed 100 years, so will he be in some kind of a flux or something? Or I mean, what happens? I mean, like you said, it is kind of infinitesimal, but for them it could be a large number, right? That's what I'm thinking.
No,
so
even
at that time, are they just sleeping, or I mean, what are they doing?
yeah, they're just withdrawn into the Lord's body, or they are liberated. So many of the Brahmas get liberated at the end of their lives.
Mhm. Yeah, but then they enter only during the annihilation, right? They enter the body.
Yeah.
So I was.
Yeah.
Yeah, but thanks, Preeti. Some clarity I got, but still, I'm not getting the full clarity. But yeah, thank you so much for explaining so beautifully. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you all for the wonderful Q&A session. Lots to learn on this. And thank you so much, Preeti Vilasini Mataji, Kirtida Sundari Mataji, and Lalitangi Mataji for your inputs and for answering these questions very wonderfully. If there are no more questions, shall we wind up?
Yes.
Yeah, I think we are good.
Thank you, Kirtida Mataji and Indulekha Mataji, and also other Matajis who gave inputs. Thank you. It was so interesting. I just got this question in my mind. Thank you for always, teaching something new in every class. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Jai Srila Prabhupada. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyaiva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Anantakoti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai,
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai,
Jai.
Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai, all the devotees ki jai. Thank you all for your wonderful association. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dhanavad Pranam.
Thank you so much, Mataji, for nicely explaining all
Hare
these
Krishna,
tough
Dhanavad
questions.
Pranam. Thank you, Mataji.